Testing, testing. This is Stefano Virgili from VOX Podcast. Together with me today, co-host Diana Ha from Nairobi, Kenya. And we have our friend Tekwane from Kenya, but currently you're not in Kenya, Tekwane, correct?
Yes, currently in Paris.
In Paris, fantastic. And why are you in Paris?
We have an office in Paris. So I was here for... I was in Kenya a month ago for Kigali Innovation Summit. Came back to Paris for 3 months, but COVID happened and kind of stuck here until further notice.
Wait, sorry, and also to add that you're in Paris because you were offered an office for free, yeah?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, so...
is that a co-working space that you're working from? It came as a...
Yeah, so we are part of a program by startup Station F. So it's one of the biggest startup campuses in Europe. They have a program called Founders Program, and we're part of that.
Fantastic, congratulations.
I'm in Paris.
Congratulations. Yeah. Diane, tell us more about the startup.
Yes. Yeah, so wait, let me take a step back and just introduce Tekwane properly. So this is Tekwane Mwendwa, who I actually met at a conference, I think last year or the year before. And the first time I met him, we were talking about what we do. And then he said he was making M-Pesa transactions free. And M-Pesa is a mobile money that's popular here in Kenya. And I didn't believe him. I thought it was a joke. But then I found out that that's exactly what he was doing. And I am a true 100% supporter of the app, have always been using it, love it, have been recommending to all my friends. So Tekwane, he's the founder of Asilimia. This is the app that I'm talking about. You can check them out at asilimia.co.ke. And I'm just going to spell that, ASILIMIA.co.ke. So before we get into what this does and a bit more about how do you make M-Pesa, cheap or free, can we talk about why did you pick Asilimia? There's a Swahili, it means something in Swahili, yeah?
Yes. So Asilimia is a Kiswahili word for percentage. And I thought that would be the best name because every fintech, every payment platform, their revenue source is a percentage of the revenue of the transaction value, right? So if MasterCard charges X percentage of the value, Safaricom the same thing, and for us we have 0%. So we thought we'd call ourselves Asilimia because we throw the business model out of the window of how we make money.
That's brilliant. I love that. Now tell us how, why did you start Asilimia and how?
Yeah, I wish I could say there was a grand plan when the idea struck. It just came out of being broke. So I had failed in a previous startup, so that startup was shut down. I was broke, making a bit of money here and there through consultancy. And generally, the purpose of M-Pesa is that it's used to send money back at home, right? So M-Pesa is like a Western Union. Look at how Western Union is used abroad. If I go to Paris, anybody who I'll see outside our Western Union is either from India, Africa, Colombia, trying to send money back home, right? So M-Pesa, majority of the transactions are peer-to-peer. And I was one of those persons, right? So every time I'm trying to send money to my brother, my mom, I'd get that annoying message of insufficient balance to pay for the transaction fee, right? And it gets annoying. It gets really, really annoying because you're trying to figure out, do I need to have 50 shillings? Do I need to have 30 shillings to do this transaction? And then you have to, yeah.
Can I just add as well to give our listeners some background? So Safaricom is a huge telco, a giant telco monopoly here, and they are the ones running M-Pesa transactions, and the M-Pesa costs are exorbitant. They're crazy. I mean, I feel coming from, living in the US and UK when transferring money is always free, suddenly here it's quite a decent chunk, sometimes even up to 10%, 5% or so of the money, the amount. So sorry, yeah, Tekwane, just to give the listeners the impact of what we're talking about here.
So the idea came from just being personally frustrated and trying to solve my own problem, which happens to be every other Kenyan's problem, right? And as I've said, because of the character of the transaction, so the M-Pesa transaction is very nuanced, right? So for an expatriate, for instance, peer-to-peer does not happen as much as for a local Kenyan who has family, friends. I have friends who joke in the office where they don't tell their friends they have M-Pesa, because the minute you tell someone, if they ask you, do you have M-Pesa, and you say yes, they're going to borrow money from you. They're going to be like, can you send me like $10 and then I'll give you back the money, right? But if you look at the context of peer-to-peer transactions or platforms outside of Kenya, they don't have that character. So Venmo in the US, you know it, it's about sharing bills. If I pay for a pizza, I need my money back, right? In Kenya, we don't have that character. It's always just pay for everything and hopefully I will pay you again, right? So I think, so for me, it's a very personal problem that I felt strongly about solving. And and I got a developer to build it. So I'm not technical, I'm just the guy who sells bullshit sometimes, as
And
Dan
that's why
likes
I
to say.
didn't. That's why I didn't believe you when I first met you. This guy is full of crap.
Yes.
Go
So
ahead.
I had a developer build it, and 2 years in, we've iterated the product. In the beginning, we started with cashback. So we were offering guys cashback for all the M-Pesa transaction in the value of the transaction fee and a bit more. And then Safaricom launched their APIs, so we were able to do the transactions within our platform. So now we enable guys to do peer-to-peer, end-to-end transactions without the transaction fee. One of the things that is very different from our application is that the recipient does not have to have Asilimia, only the sender needs to have it. So that's a genesis of it.
Can I ask a few tech questions? I start getting very excited about what you're saying, and I start having questions at the back of my mind. First of all, you're basically cutting the middleman, which is a pitch that I heard many times. But if you cut the middleman, is it eventually you becoming the middleman? If you say that the percentage business model is not applicable, how do you make money? And lastly, how do you handle the cash in and cash out? Is because the transaction is paid when someone top up or cash out from the wallet?
So everything you've asked does not work with us. So first of all, we don't remove the middleman, right? So when we looked at what problem we're solving, we realized M-Pesa works perfectly well, right? So they have a massive infrastructure in regards to cash in and cash out. You can't outcompete Safaricom when it comes to the cash in and the cash out, right? So we're like, okay, that part works. Second thing, trust. In Kenya, trust is a very big thing. And, especially when it comes to money and asking for people their national identity card. So Safaricom does a good job of KYC and the trust factor, right? So we're like, we can't really outcompete in that regards. And then, so the only problem that was there that everybody complained about M-Pesa was the cost. It wasn't the cash in or the cash out. It wasn't the technology. People don't mind using the SIM toolkit to make the transactions. It works across smartphones and dumb phones, right? So the bar was set very high, right? And it's real-time transactions. So M-Pesa as well, if I send you money right now, you get it, you go and cash out. So our infrastructure in the beginning, we can't compete, right? So for us, what we do is we are the middleman. We're not removing Safaricom, so we're just a route to one M-Pesa transaction to another one. So that's the difference. Secondly, we don't charge a transaction fee at the moment. So what we're doing, we have a subscription where users pay us a subscription. And then gradually the hope is that we become a distribution platform for other services and products. Currently, we are testing it out with airtime, which is working quite well. And just gradually as we grow our users, and then as we find different use cases within the ecosystem, then we adapt our model based on that. I don't know if I answered your
Interesting.
questions.
So how do you practically do away without fees? Because you aggregate the transaction in one account and then you dispatch from there, or how does it work? How can you manage to remove the fees if the fees are imposed by the operator? I don't understand.
So yeah, we don't remove the fees. We literally pay for the fees, like we pay on your behalf. So it's generally us choosing to just pay for the transaction fee. So there's no eureka or bright idea around that, because for us to have done it differently, it would have had to be a closed loop wallet, right? As normal wallets tend to work, where you own both the cash in and the cash out. But as I mentioned, that would have led to us to scale very slowly. Two, we would have inconvenienced the recipient and not the user. So basically, for instance, if Diana is using that to pay the boda guy, that transaction is quick and fast, right? So she can't start telling the boda guy, download this app so that I can pay you and blah, blah, blah. Or if a Kenyan is sending money to their grandmother or their mother in the village, they won't tell their mother that their mother will download this application. And then when the mother needs to cash out, because in Kenya, the character of digital transaction is that within the first 5 minutes of receiving the money, the recipient has cashed out to cash. So the cash out infrastructure is very, very important for the success of a digital wallet, a digital payment platform in Kenya at the moment. So we couldn't really sufficiently provide that without burning a lot of cash just for the agents network.
So Tekwane, in a way, you're sort of buying transaction data. Would you say that?
Of the sorts. Yes.
Stefano, keep asking your fintech questions.
Can you guide me through the journey of the user? So the user stumbles upon your website and then creates an account, and what's next? How does it go from end to end, the journey of your customer?
Wait, actually, Tekwane, can I do that?
Yes.
Can I offer to do that and interrupt me if I'm wrong? So, I mean, as a very enthusiastic user, also, if I want to send money, let's say I want to send to you, Stefano, and you have M-Pesa number, meaning you can receive money in your mobile number. I will download the Asilimia app, and then so it will ask me to sign in, whether through Facebook or Google, to as an identity kind of check, and then I am basically just using Asilimia, almost a very similar way to how I would use how I would transfer money without Asilimia. So I just put in the amount that I want to transfer, and I pick from a contact in my contact list, and then it's done. And what happens is I get a message saying, okay, what is it? Maybe I'm trying to pay you $10. So $10 came out of my account, and it went into this Asilimia account, what is called change agent. And then from there, they transfer it over to your account, Stefano. So you will receive the $10, and it wouldn't look like the traditional as if it's coming from me, but it would have information saying it came from change agent or Asilimia, and this is the person who's sending it to Diane.
And to you as a user is seamless. You don't realize that, I mean, the one that received the boda, the rider that give you a ride, doesn't notice that it's not slower or it's not more complicated. It's just the same amount of steps for him or for her.
Exactly. Just wait, and then you receive the message and you got it. So there's no difference except for the message looks a bit different, saying that it came through Asilimia, but it's from Diane.
Tekwane, correct? Was she accurate in describing the process? And so now tell me from your point of view, what's happening in the background? So from the moment that you...
Yeah, so for us, it's, as I mentioned, we're just a switch. So we basically pull money from her M-Pesa account, and then we disperse money from our own M-Pesa account to somebody else. So it's basically how you would do with Venmo, PayPal, where it's PayPal just being attached on top of your credit card, right? So you pull money from the credit card into somebody else's PayPal. The only thing we changed on the conventional way of wallet working is that money doesn't end up sitting in our account on the end. So the recipient does not need to create an account with us. We don't need to know who they are, what they're doing. All we just care about is that they have an existing Safaricom account.
So you're just routing the transaction in a way.
Yeah.
And so how did you approach M-Pesa? Does M-Pesa know that you're doing that? Do you have a partnership with them, or you simply take their APIs and integrate them in your routing system?
So yeah, we don't have a...
Sorry, Tekwane, can I interject here? So I wonder if this will help answer the question, if you're able to talk through the evolution of business models that you went through until like the subscription model that you have now, that could also then in turn answer the question about this relationship with Safaricom.
So yeah, so I think, so one, we don't have a partnership with Safaricom beyond any partnership any payment platform would have in the country. So there's multiple variations of what we do in the market. Safaricom doesn't necessarily do any partnerships per se, right? Because it's really just a question of they have APIs that are usually open. You apply for them, they know who you are, they have the KYC documents, but they don't provide you any benefit beyond that we can call it a partnership. It's a
so you're a business
provider.
user.
Exactly, we just have a typical relationship with them. Our business model is not necessarily in line with them. It's just a question of we saw that one, we needed to evolve a little bit in terms of so one, we started getting a lot of fraud. So our platform started having a lot of issues around fraud because what users could do is just basically download and use our app, right? You know, we don't ask you for anything. We don't charge you anything. We don't make it any more complicated than it is. So we decided, okay, so how do we slow down the issues that we were getting, right? So let's kind of separate real users to...
So Tekwane, with fraud, right? How did that happen? So is it a fake user with like a user with no money in their account and they're transfer how does that work?
So it's through reversals, right? So basically, at the moment, you can have more than one M-Pesa account with Safaricom, or you could be having your friends and then you just receive money. So you keep sending each other money, right? And then you call Safaricom and you tell them, kindly reverse this money that I paid here or did this. And that money would be taken from us. And they tend to do very small values. So we never really used to notice until we hit scale, right? So you start losing a very large volume of cash and you're like, okay, oh shit, what happened, right? So there is that.
So does that mean, they're doing the transaction outside of Asilimia and then they're calling Asilimia to do the reversal? So
no, they're calling Safaricom as well, right? Because you see, we work, so they use Safaricom infrastructure to interact with us, right?
Yeah.
So they'll call Safaricom. So Safaricom is like the big brother. They call so they don't call us, because if they call us, we'll notice what's going on, right? So they call Safaricom. So same thing they do. Currently, you have that happening a lot. Like currently during the COVID period, and we're trying to solve that problem for Matatu owners. Because of reduction of cash transactions, people have been paying Matatu guys or Boda guys with M-Pesa, and then they call Safaricom immediately and the transfer happens because Safaricom automated that process. So they just send an M-Pesa to Safaricom.
It's as if like I took a Matatu and then I paid the Matatu through maybe Asilimia. So the money is coming out of us.
No, through M-Pesa. If you use through M-Pesa. If you use M-Pesa, so you pay it directly with M-Pesa without Asilimia. You will call Safaricom and tell them, reverse this amount. And then they'll do it immediately.
But how am I gaining from that? I don't see... what's the
Diana,
impact?
you wouldn't gain. You don't need the $1 as Diana, but somebody else needs the $1 that they paid for the bus trip, right? Or the Boda guy. Because you see, you're thinking honest perspective.
Yeah, I need to change my... I need to put on the Kenyan hat and like... So you're saying that I actually got the Matatu services, but I don't want to pay for it, and I reverse it. Okay, understood.
Yeah, people do that for Chandarana, Nakumat. You go
buy
there,
grocery.
Just in the best interest of the audience that is not well versed with the terminology from Kenya. So Boda is the rider, and then Nakumat is the supermarket. What else we mentioned? The
Matatu is like public transportation.
Okay. Okay, let's contextualize. Interesting. And how much was the damage that they caused to your business?
Was significant. It was significant to notice because they were doing very small value transactions, right? They were doing $1, $2, money that would be under the radar when Safaricom communicates to us. But they did it at such a volume after they realized we weren't really checking, because we have a policy of ensuring the customer is always right from our standpoint. But that ended up costing quite a large chunk of.
So you definitely had to change the hat as well. The customer is not always right. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the first time we had to, because we try to be very customer centric in how we build our product. That we have our slogan is ease, freedom, and value. Where we say we try to replicate the ingeniousness of cash. So most of the time, everybody likes to say we compete with Safaricom or we compete with XYZ. For us, what we try to actually do is simulate the characters of cash in the African context. Because in Kenya, if I have Kenya shillings and I cross the border of Uganda, immediately my money is usable, right? If I cross into Uganda with MasterCard as my debit card of choice, I can't get money from an ATM. I have to look for a MasterCard specific ATM. If I cross the border with M-Pesa or Safaricom, it stops being valuable, right? Because I'll only find Tigo or whatnot. And it's also the same case in Kenya. If you travel across the country, you will realize that Safaricom is actually not as prevalent as it is in Nairobi, Mombasa, and maybe one more big city, Nakuru, right? Because you find, because of how Safaricom works, it's a cash in, cash out balance, right? So if you go to my village in eastern side of Kenya, Kilome, I will not be able to withdraw my M-Pesa money because the agents don't have the float or the cash to give me cash that I need. Or the merchants won't accept me to pay them with M-Pesa because they're going to have the same problem, where if they want to cash out, they can't do it. So you find M-Pesa is actually an urban city product more than it is a countrywide product, right? So we didn't see that M-Pesa being the competition or the benchmark, but cash is the benchmark.
Yeah.
Because cash is highly scalable, very convenient, and highly valuable.
Yeah, definitely on the valuability of it. I was a speaker in Kenya last year when I met Diane at one of the conferences on Seamless, Kenya. And there was one panel where I was sitting, which was, the title was, is cash still the king, or something? Is a cashless society possible? It was all around the cashless society, and I think for Africa is still probably quite early, but also quite healthy not to be entirely cashless, because I stay in Singapore and I see that in Singapore there are already stores that don't accept any cash, which means that every transaction that we do is actually recorded. And not that I have anything to hide, but in terms of traceability of the transaction, cash is still the one that is untraceable. But it comes with other set of problems. I remember bumping into this video produced by the Bank of Uganda that was teaching how to handle cash, because some people, like workers, they put it in their boots when they go to work, and some of the currency degrade very, very quickly. And also it's quite scarce. The problem that you have described, I remember when I used to stay in Kampala, there was one morning that through 5 ATMs that I went through, I couldn't withdraw 1.5 million shillings, which is, at the time, I think it was about $400. And the ATMs were either dry, no cash in it, or they wouldn't accept the same network of my credit card. So it's obviously easy to say M-Pesa have solved the problem, but there are so many, there is a myriad of other problems like the one that you just described, which I was not even aware of, that is not like widespread as a network, but is actually localized in the urban areas.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, do you think your service can be expanded to other payment methods, or is only going to work with M-Pesa?
Yeah, so we're actually currently working on the next phase of the app, where we're integrating PesaLink and Airtel and T-Cash, because again, as I mentioned, our benchmark is cash, which is scalability. So we're looking at how do we solve those issues that I've mentioned by making this one app that enables you to not be restricted by only the payment option or plan that you're currently on. So that's what we're currently doing. So, but in the beginning, we saw that M-Pesa was the highly asked for, but now through the data we've collected and the interaction with our users and customers, we've seen other branches that we want to integrate into the application for their convenience.
Interesting. And also I've seen in Kampala in Uganda, many agents for M-Pesa. Are you saying that the agents of M-Pesa in Uganda, they cannot exchange, they cannot cash out for you if you have an M-Pesa number registered in Kenya? Is that what you're saying?
So that is, so that happens a lot. So if you go to other East African countries, so Rwanda has the same thing, Tanzania has the same thing, but it's in specific spaces, right? So it's those, they tend to be next to the border, or, you know, for the Kenyans that come in, or the Kenyans that send money to their family members. And then two, they tend to be in other high trade locations to do that cash transfer, but it's not a Kampala-wide network. So you'll only find it at the Kampala bus station or right at the border of Kenya and Uganda. Rwanda, the same thing, because you do have a few Kenyans who live in those countries, and how they get money from, you know, Kenyan families sending money to a Kenyan in Uganda, or a Ugandan Kenyan who's there sending money to Kenya. They use those M-Pesa agents who tend to be quasi-formal. So they're not really even the Safaricom agent, right? Because Safaricom isn't, the agency network is not supposed to be across the border. So you'll actually send the money to someone in Kenya. The guy sends a notification to that guy who's giving you the cash that they have received the money, and then they give you the cash. So it's a gray market of sorts.
Interesting. Diane?
Yeah, so sorry, when I interrupted you earlier when we were talking about fraud, and you answering the question of the evolution of the business model, and maybe trickle in there also if Safaricom, you know, disturbed you in any way of your business. Can you talk us through? So you started with free M-Pesa transactions, yeah?
Yeah, so the beginning, we were like, you know, we don't want to charge anyone anything, and we believe that there's more money to be made by thinking not like a payment company. So what we've tried to do with the team is we don't want to think like a fintech. We don't want to think payments. We don't want to think about best practices around how payments work and where the money is. That has always been our first rule and only rule. And that meant that we didn't want to charge nothing. So we were like, okay, guys, every day you need to realize that we're going to die if we don't figure out where the money is, right? So every day we are bleeding, right? So investors don't really like us as much because, and I keep telling the team, we need to be scared enough every day that we will shut down, because our model is just killing money, right? Because we literally just pay for the transaction fees. And that has been the case until the point where we're like, okay, cool. So we need to kind of change the dynamics a little bit. So we were like, okay, let's charge something, right? Because one, we just need to slow down the bleeding. Not to slow down the bleeding, the fraud actually. So it was more to slow down the fraud. And secondly, we just wanted to confirm, do our users value what we're doing to pay us something? And we actually launched this right a month before COVID. So it's the best time to test our theory, because Safaricom just made the transactions of between 0 and 1,000 shillings free. And our users know it, and we engage them and ask them, why are you still paying? So we have actually seen more activity and a retention of our subscribers, even though they're fully aware that Safaricom made some of the transactions free. And we asked them, why do they do it? And now it has become that because of our infrastructure. So we've been very specific on not being, again, a payment company, because when you just think about moving money from point A to point B, you can do the laziest thing that's possible, right? It's not technically challenging. So it's become how our infrastructure is. You can send money to multiple numbers or multiple values at one time. You know, it's one click payment without multiple hoops. You know, our app starts immediately you start it. You know, there's not that many complexities around it. And now we are moving it further to where now, you know, getting your transactional data is better. It's presented in a much better manner. you're able to distinguish which transaction you're doing. Is it personal? Is it business? Because some of the users use our platform for business purposes. So yeah.
How many users do you have at the moment?
10,000.
And you've been funded $500,000, right?
Yes.
And currently you are in France under an accelerator or an incubator program?
So we call it an incubator. So they're more of an incubation for 2 years. They provide you with the infrastructure, so a wide network of investors, a place to work from. They even have co-living, so I get a housing down in Paris. And then just to be able to access the European market.
Are they hinting that you could attract the French-speaking African countries?
So how it works is that they have a very different model of incubation. So they say as entrepreneurs, you should be independent. You figure out what you need to do, which is going to provide you with the basic ingredients of you as a startup to be successful. And that leads to us being in a cesspool of other entrepreneurs. So we've spoken to entrepreneurs that are doing the more or less the same, or that have fintechs in Franco-speaking Africa. For us as a company, we're not interested in that market yet. We're more interested in the East African community at the moment because one, we share the same nuances, culture, language. The infrastructure is more or less the same. We've seen the use case. We've done a couple of pilots in Uganda. We've seen them work successfully. We have a lot of cross-border partners who we've started talking to that have presence in Kenya and then they have presence in Uganda. So we see that more easier to activate than if we start thinking about Senegal or some other Franco-speaking African country where we have to start from zero.
May I ask you, you say that you got through a failure prior to success in another startup. Yeah. Was it also in fintech or a different field?
No, it was not in fintech. So we were doing 3D maps for public buildings. So we were building digital maps for shopping malls, hospitals, schools, and so, installing them in touch screens.
So I guess that closing that business, you say you went broke and then you started this new business. I guess it was a very growth journey where you learned a lot about the problem that you were experiencing, and also it was a constant figuring out like a Rubik cube, the solution. And every time you think you got the solution, the problem change or the fraud comes in. How have you evolved as an entrepreneur of the past couple of years, let's say?
First is to have a thick skin, right? It's to be able to do a lot with very minimal resources. I think that's been one of our key things in the company, where we've ensured that the company evolves in terms of value. So lacking resources should never mean that your product should remain the same. You shouldn't grow your users, get partners. So it's made me very, very resourceful as an entrepreneur. I've been lucky to work with very brilliant team members from across the globe, the country. Our product has evolved quite a lot in terms of the system, the app. So what I've learned over the 2 years is being very, very resourceful, irrespective of whether you have funding or not, or you're making profit or not. It's just to really, really being critical of where do I want to be, and if it's important for me to be there, then I have to make it happen, right? So also being slightly naive has been something I've learned to rely on quite a bit. Because without being naive, sometimes I would question why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Very interesting. And how happy, so you say you know where you want to be. How far ahead are you? How close you are to your goal? And how happy are you with the entrepreneur that you have become?
I think I'm very, very happy with how far we've gotten to this point. We have a lot more to do this year. We are starting to launch our enterprise solution. So there's an angle of the business that we are about to launch. So that's pretty much green. It's going to come with its own set of challenges. where we've already experienced those challenges last year when we had started kind of testing the market on the same. So that might make us completely start at zero, where I have no idea what we're doing. There'll be a lot of surprises in between there. And yeah, and I think COVID as well has thrown a spanner to the works. The African market in terms of funding for startups was on the rise. 2019 was a very good year. 2020, we are as a company, we are worried that cash will fly out, or there'll be a fleet of cash. Also, the time is kind of interesting where everyone and anyone has a fintech. So Kenya is an overly crowded market for that. So that makes me feel that I need to actually not think about what I've done in the past and kind of muscle up a bit more, because we are fighting with a bit more heavily more funded startups. The next 3 months, we have lost our brand value, because when we say making M-Pesa free, people are like, but Safaricom is doing that right now, So for the next 3 months, we are fighting for dear. We're not fighting for dear life in the sense that we'll shut down, but the competition is wild. So I think thinking of myself as an entrepreneur is to say that what I did the last couple of years doesn't count. What I'll do for the next 11 months, 10 months is what's going to really count. Yeah.
Very beautiful. Tak, my dying question to you.
Yeah.
So did you get any disturbances, any issues from Safaricom? Did they cause you any trouble when you're doing what you're doing?
Not really, because if you look at Safaricom's growth strategy is actually more on partnerships now. So previously, before, I think people would have said Safaricom is a troublemaker in terms of shutting down ideas. And previously, before, there have been situations where that could have been true. But currently, if you look at the financial projection, they're looking to grow more. Their revenue now more is on other services, more than direct peer-to-peer transactions, because there's only so much you can do, right? As I mentioned, the biggest problem with M-Pesa in terms of the character of the transaction, it's a peer-to-peer platform. And that has a cap, right? After you get to a certain level, you can't grow beyond that. So right now they're looking more into partnerships. Just today they announced a partnership with Visa to do a debit card attached to your M-Pesa. They work very closely with banks. So you find we don't think that we will get into problems with Safaricom. We don't compete with them. What we say is that Kenyans love M-Pesa. It's a complicated relationship, but Kenyans love being in that relationship, and we don't see us changing that now to the point that they will engage us. But we do feel that our enterprise solution, we have had conversations with our potential partners, clients, and there has been that thing, them saying, okay, we love what you're bringing for us, but we don't think this is going to fly, because when we show them so imagine you as Diana, you have your basic transactions that you do, and you've seen the savings that you normally do, right? So we're speaking to companies where we can save them $20,000 a month on their transaction fees, right? So and that's a small organization. We're not really talking about a huge organization. That's just 2,000 people, users or customer platform. So we do feel that on the enterprise side, we could get a bit of pushback. But I guess you can only
another
maintain
challenge you're willing to take on.
Yeah, it's fun. It's always interesting when we introduce ourselves and somebody says, Safaricom will kill you or blah blah blah. But I think the lucky thing is we are small still in regards to the volumes that they do. Right now, they're still their biggest partners was spot betting companies. They lost them $1 billion. A billion Kenya shillings. So we're not big enough to lose them 1 billion Kenya shillings. But
well, if they won't kill you, I guess they will buy you somehow. They will be interested enough. Could that be an outcome, having them to take over or become shareholders in your company?
I think based on how we understand the market and some of the insights we've gotten and how we're developing our product, we do see that as a potential outcome. If not from them, it's from their competitors, because currently they own 96% of the market.
Wow.
Everybody else is struggling on a 4%. So Orange Telecom has tried to launch their cash, their
T-cash.
mobile money multiple times. They shut it down recently to start again. Airtel has been trying to do that. MasterCard and Visa have been struggling. Pesalink has been struggling as well. And if you look at all these companies, they do have a substantial amount of money to compete. But what that shows you is that it's not a money problem, right? So the adoption of mobile money wallets in Kenya is not a resource. It's not a resource problem, right? It's a strategy problem. And we feel with our insights and our consistent execution of the same thing that we might become interesting to multiple parties that are interested in the IP that we're consistently building.
Very interesting. We've taken up so much of your time. Diane, do you have any other question for Tekwane?
No, that was my dying question and he answered it. Positioning yourself in a complementary manner while hiding under the radar a little bit for the moment until, potentially bigger problems come. I'm satisfied with that answer.
Yeah.
So you have one last minute to talk to our audience. What would you like to share, and who would you like to talk to in our audience? Users, partners, investors? Who could be your ideal stakeholder?
Right now, we're looking for partners. As mentioned, we are launching our enterprise solution that is looking to save big on the cost of receiving digital cash as we move to. Because of COVID, every organization is trying to digitize the cash transactions, and we're pretty good at that in terms of doing that in an efficient and because our biggest core mission as a payment company is to reduce costs. So we don't necessarily talk about just connecting the pipes, because that was what was being done 5 years ago. You could have started a payment company and said, your value proposition was integrating APIs. But for us, we say that we're looking at optimization of the infrastructure. So that means get more users to pay you with digital and getting saving a lot more from that interaction.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. It was very interesting, and we wish you all the best there in France. And I'm looking forward perhaps to see you one day in Kenya.
Definitely. I can see you have I don't know if that's a bottle of whiskey on your window, but hopefully it is. Well, after COVID, we can finally open it.
Nice meeting you. Thank you for your time.
Same here.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Tek. Bye.
Bye.